Ladies and gentlemen, he hails from Brooklyn, New York, New York, New York. This man has made his presence felt around the country and parts of the world. And without any further ado, it's my pleasure to introduce to you the president of the National Action Network, the one, the very only, the Reverend Al Sharpton.
Thank you. I'm very happy and honored to be here this afternoon and very happy to be part of this gathering with the Black Contractors Association here in San Diego. And I think that the theme that you have chosen beyond civil rights and affirmative action is an appropriate way to really deal with the 21st century situation that we're in. One of the things that I think is upon us is as we look at what is going on in the national political scene and in the global scene, we are at a point of realignment all over the world. We are in a point of transition. What we have not done in the business community is come to terms with those transitions in a way that will serve us rather than defeat us. Everything that's happened in history has happened because there was a necessary movement to resolve a problem. So when we talk about the era of civil rights and the era of affirmative action, that happened because it had to remedy the challenges of that time. Now that we are in an era that they have gotten rid of affirmative action, and some of us say we're in a post-civil rights era, the problem is that too many of us don't understand that because we have removed some of the remedies does not necessarily mean that we remove the problem. If you were sick in a hospital and you were given certain medication, to remove the medication doesn't mean you well, it just means they removed the medication. So the illusion that some have is that if we call it post-civil rights, that means everything is fair. Or if we end affirmative action, that means the ground is even. Well, both are wrong. Everything is still not fair. And the ground is not even. And in fact, with some of the new things that they're bringing in, and the battles that we're facing, particularly in areas like this, with immigrations and new fights in terms of the laws to protect some workers and not others, and some contractors and not others, and making you pay jobs and contracts and tax. Some folks that didn't know what an uneven playing field is are now ready to ball up their fists and march themselves. Because unfairness has now been distributed. And unless we find a formula that works for everybody, we all going to find ourselves in a precarious position that we cannot perform. So what you must do is then look at history to be your instructor to say, how did others deal in their time, and we can come out with the answers in our time. The way that people dealt with crises before, or challenges before, is the leverage that they had. You go back to 19th century where Lincoln had to wrestle with the question of keeping the country together, to slavery, all the way to today where we're fighting over the war and over the future of this country. It is those that have the most leverage and the ability to use the leverage that will get the most out of society. What is the challenge? The challenge is that if you're building in this country and you want to get contracts and you come from a certain community, people of color have had problems in terms of access to capital, in terms of access to the contracts. We are told on one hand to don't have a welfare mentality, quit looking for government handouts. On the other hand, if we go into business, we can't get the contracts, we can't get the bank loans. So you tell us on one hand to quit begging, on the other hand, we can't get to work.
Say it again.
So what are we supposed to just do, march to the cemetery and just wait and die? We can go to war and fight. We can pay taxes. We're good enough to support candidates, but there is no economic way out. The economic base of our communities are basically where they were 40 years ago. Friday, 2 weeks ago, Martin Luther King III and I led a march in Memphis commemorating the assassination of his father 40 years ago. 40 years ago in Memphis, Tennessee, Martin Luther King Jr. was killed in Memphis. If you look at the economic conditions of Black America in '68 and compare them to the economic conditions of Black America in April of '08, statistically, we are about the same place. We are still doubly unemployed. It is still 3 times more difficult to get a bank loan if you're Black with the same credit, same assets, same background. Today, now, people say, but your standard of living is higher. But it is comparatively the same gap between Black and white that it was 40 years ago. In fact, that is higher. If the gap is the same, that means that you still don't enjoy the same American experience. Malcolm X used to say, if a man had a knife in your back 6 inches, take it out 3 inches, that's progress, but you still got a knife in your back. The objective was not to have a better form of inequality. The objective was equality. So we wasn't asking for a better form of unfairness. We weren't asking for designer handcuffs. We were asking for freedom. Ain't nothing nice about having diamond-studded shackles, Cartier shackles on your ankles. I'd rather be free barefoot than to have diamond-studded Cartier shackles telling me where they're 14 karat gold, but they're still shackles. We need the ability to be able to compete. Now, the reason it becomes interesting to me is that if we cannot compete in our own communities, and we can't compete in other communities, then there is not much different than we had pre-civil rights, pre-affirmative action. What was so amazing to me is how people consider it fair to dominate building and construction contracts and contract services in their community and ours. And then if we ask to just have the peace in our own community, we're begging. So you want your house and my house. And if I want to build my own house, I'm begging. If we just were able to deal with the percentage we are, commensurate with the numbers we are, we would, rather than killing each other off in a crab in a barrel mentality, there'd be more than all of us could handle. Suppose if the Black contractors in San Diego just had 5% of the contracts.
2.
Just 5%. You talk about, well, you know, I was coming on a plane last night. Well, somebody asked me on the plane, Reverend Al, what you come to San Diego for? Like I come to start some trouble. And I always tell tell me, start grinning, ha, when are you coming to town? So I look at him real stern, tell him I'm coming to see what y'all are doing. I said, well, we're doing all right. Well, if you ain't got no problem, we coming to town. Guy volunteered, said, well, you know, blacks are only 5% of San Diego. I said, really? 5% of contracts? 5% of the building? No, 5% of the population. Well, if we're 5% of the population, 5% of the taxpayers, why can't we get 5% of the spoils? Since 5% is so little. If we are such a small minority in population, then you wouldn't mind a small minority in that contract coming our way. But why does 5% become great when we want our piece of the pie, but it's minute when it comes to population? What I'm saying is that the leverage we must use in an election year is that 5% in San Diego, that percentage in California, is now leverageable if we know what we're talking about. So rather than McCain or Obama or Hillary talking to us about feel good, we need to talk about business. Where are the federal contracts and the federal mandates going to come down if you're president? We're not having that discussion. We got to do something about crime. Well, you've privatized the criminal justice system, but we're not in that business. We're in the jails. I led a protest a few years ago in Vieques, Puerto Rico. They put us in jail. Everybody in the jail was black. I'm sitting up in the cell looking at nothing but contracts. Toilet paper. Somebody making billions of dollars just on toilet paper. We ain't getting none of that. Food, towels, jail uniform. How can we go to jail but can't get the contracts at the jail? Because we're not leveraging business. What we must do in Black America is adopt a new mentality of business. Give you an example. In New York State has the second largest pension funds in the country. New York State Controller is the sole trustee to decide by himself where that pension fund money goes, how it's invested. Much of that pension funds, or most of those pension funds are used as investment capital for developments, hotels, all kinds of developments all over the country. There was a meeting between, this is in the mid-90s, between the black leadership in the state and the state controller, who control these funds, way upwards of $120 billion. You know what they asked him in the meeting? Will he support the Million Man March? I almost slapped him in the meeting. What do we care? Whether he support the Million Man, if he's going to make one brother go or not go. We ought to be saying that we wanted the percentage of the pension fund put with people that would contract with us to develop our community. Well, guess what? The largest pension funds in the country is in California. This is the largest pension fund in the country. Which means anybody running for public office, from president to governor to senator, needs to discuss with black contractors how those pension funds investments should have attached to it that they're going to do business in indigenous communities that need help. How does it help the community? If black contractors say that I'm going to, with my contract, train inner city young people that deal with the gang problem,